More big news in the welding world. I got a free MIG welder. This time I won a contest on the Eastwood Company YouTube channel. Eastwood.com sells auto body repair and metalworking tools, and their YouTube channel has a ton of good tutorials on it. They did a random drawing of their subscribers, and I got lucky and got picked to get their MIG 135 welder. This is perfect timing because I've recently been having some trouble getting good results on a sheet metal project with my stick welder. MIG is supposed to be easier to use to weld thin metal, so this machine could help finish that project. As we talked about in my stick welding video, I'm pretty much a welding newbie, so if you're new to it too, then hopefully this video can help you figure out what to expect if you were to try your hand at MIG welding for the first time. So I'm welding with 0.25 inch solid steel wire using argon and CO2 and 16 gauge sheet metal, so I need G6.5. The top dial controls the amount of electricity, the bottom how quickly the wire is coming out of the gun. We'll start with 16 gauge sheet metal. That's about 1/16 of an inch thick. The thicker your metal, the more electricity and wire you need. So I was sitting here thinking I set the machine correctly, but it's not quite welding right. It shouldn't sound all sizzly and it shouldn't look so burnt, I don't think. Long story short, I just pulled a Bob Claggett. I didn't have my gas turned on. Now, with the gas on, whenever I pull the trigger, a cloud of gas surrounds the weld, protecting it from essentially boiling over and sending blobs of metal everywhere. That's about 1,000,000,000% better. And it's still, oh yeah, that's strong. Very cool. That worked so well, holy cow. The MIG welder passed initial testing with flying colors, so now it's time for the ultimate test. The mattress frame tape measure holder. You might remember from my stick welding for newbies video that this metal actually is pretty low quality, and so it ended up being tough to weld with. The stick welder also proved to be a little too powerful. I wasn't really able to control it enough to stop it from blowing holes in the metal. So let's see if this one does any better. I'll start by marking my metal and cutting it on the bandsaw. Then I can creep up on the final length with the belt sander. I'm clamping the pieces together here to make sure I cut them to exactly the same size. And then the clamp comes off to cut out notches for the side pieces. Then I'll use the grinding wheel and the bench grinder to clean up the cuts, and the wire wheel to remove burrs and paint. Next, we need to make some mounting holes in the back plate. I tried to place them toward the top to make it easier to screw into the wall later. It's tough to get a good grip on the screw head if it's tucked down inside the box. I literally just drilled for something like 12 minutes and got this far. This bed frame sheet metal is hard. So we're gonna go to plan B. Instead, I'll just cut some notches into these pieces and then weld them together later to make the holes. Well, the power just went out, so I guess that means I'm going to bed. We're back, and so's the power. Amazing. I've got the welder dialed in to weld this bed frame metal, so now we can actually weld the tape measure holder together. Then we'll grind the weld smooth with a grinding disc on the angle grinder. Now it's time to build the rectangle itself. Even if everything is square to begin with, the welding process can warp the metal back and forth. So I'm being extra careful here to check the squareness every step of the way. I'm trying a method here based on a tip from the Welding Tips and Tricks podcast. I'll weld up both halves of the rectangle separately, making sure they're square. Then I'll weld those two halves together last, making sure everything is square again. Clamps in the way. I just wanted to add some tacks in the side here so I don't have to worry about this thing busting apart if I grind the welds too much on the other side. Now we'll shape the tabs we welded on earlier. And we'll knock off the burrs again. And then we'll brush out the soot inside by hand. And then we'll give it a quick coat of paint. Now that the paint's dry, let's take a look at the results. There's not giant gaping holes in the bottom like last time. My corners are even. It's still a little bit out of square, but it's far better than last time. Most importantly, I got this result with virtually zero frustration. Everything just worked. With that in mind, let's consider the welder and MIG welding themselves. If I didn't get this machine for free, this would have cost me $300. On top of that, I spent $230 for this argon CO2 gas tank. I could have saved money by leasing it, but I just figured I'd save more money in the long run by buying it outright. You can expect to add another $50 for a welding mask and gloves if you don't have those yet. How is the process of MIG welding? Compared to stick welding, holy cow, was this easy. My favorite part was that I didn't have to stop in between welds to chip away the slag. I could just stop, take a look at where my weld was, and then if it needed more metal, I could keep going. One word of warning, safety glasses are no joke here. There were multiple times where I had sparks shooting up into my welding mask, so having safety glasses on meant I could just laugh it off instead of having to stop and dig a hot chunk of metal out of my eye. Would I recommend this welder and or MIG welding for a newbie welder? Absolutely. The thing that excites me about this the most is that I can just focus on the project instead of having to spend so much time worrying about whether my welds are up to snuff. I do want to get better at welding, but as long as I'm not working on a submarine or a trailer, I think it's fine to build up incremental progress. I'm sure there's some amount of bias here because I am still excited that I got the machine for free, but no joke, this thing worked great. I really think I'd be just as happy if I had to pay full price. For example, I guess not all machines have this infinitely adjustable voltage, and I used that at least once during the project to really fine-tune my welding. That being said, $530 is a lot of money. That puts this type of machine out of reach for a ton of people. And if you go too cheap with MIG welding, it sounds like you get really bad results. I was talking to YouTuber Joe Z about his $85 Harbor Freight MIG welder, and he reported just having terrible luck with that machine. Keep in mind that $85 is even a lot of money to spend on a tool. So I previously was intimidated by getting into MIG because it's like you either spend a lot of money and you get a piece of garbage, or you spend a ton of money and you get a great machine. I think this one proves that you don't have to go top of the line to get good results. But if it's going to be a long time before you can afford anything like this, I still would highly recommend going the cheap stick welder route. It works well once you figure it out. It's still fun and it gets the job done. You just might have to spend a lot more time getting good at it before you can start applying it outside of practice. I hope you like this video. If you want to see more, then consider subscribing. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to post them in the comments down below. I try to respond to everybody who stops by. Thanks for watching.